Well, hello and welcome to the 5th edition of Borders Rugby in Focus, and it's the start of the brand new league season, and we've come down here at Jedforest because our first commentary game will be in fact Jedforest against Selkirk, and we have three gentlemen with us today. Dale Clancy, of course, ever present, but on the left hand side we have Bill Johnstone, legendary producer and commentator, of course, from the BBC, now retired but looking fit and healthy, which is what we like to see. And over on the far side we've got Paul Cranston, who is the president of Jedforest. And I think, Paul, you've been president for a number of years now.
7 years, I think, now it is.
No one else want the job, or?
Basically.
Well, it's just great to have you all with us today. And Bill, of course, you're here because of your close connections with Jedforest. You live in the town, and of course, Jedforest very, very close to your heart.
I'll just start off by saying Paul, in my view, is the best president Jedforest has ever had since I've been associated with this club since way back in the 60s. He's a great worker for the club. I go back really to the time when I was a schoolboy myself, and we used to come down, and as Hoyk High School first 15, Paul, we used to play Jed Thistle up at the Glebe. And I remember my older brother Dick playing for Hoyk High School second year against Jedburgh Grammar School in between the semi-final and the final of the main sevens. We used to sit in the railway line across there, Stuart, the far side, and the trains would go past. The game would disappear in a cloud of black smoke, and everybody appeared again through the fog as the wee lads played on. So I've had a long association with Jedforest one way and another.
Now, Dale, you're a Peebles man, of course, but what does Jedforest mean to you?
Jedforest were always a team who we, as Peebles, at times, we were always kind of passing in the night, if you will. We were, they were always a small town, small borders town. Peebles were exactly the same, but we always had small pockets of players, and I feel Jed are probably one of those teams that have just pushed on a little bit better than what Peebles have. You think of the players in my time, the Youngs, Urston, we've got Hogg as well. Those sort of players have been stalwarts for their local town, and they've stuck by them for years and years as well. So it's always been a very difficult game for them. It's probably been a target for Peebles to try and get up to those levels. But do you know what? Like, it's been a while since I've played. I've really enjoyed over the last few years. I was just saying to Paul off air about a few years ago how I thought Jedforest had one of the best 15s in Scottish rugby. It's the depth after that, which is obviously it's quite difficult for teams. But I've always thought that Jed have been a really good borders team, but a really good team in Scotland. You think of all the international players and the players that have had come through here for the South as well. They've been a huge part in the success of what is borders rugby now.
Well, much more on Jedforest very, very shortly, but let's talk about last weekend. It was the final weekend before we get into the league season. We did have competitive rugby at Netherdale. It was Gala against Peebles, your old team, of course, and 14 all at one point, and then Gala got a couple of late tries, all converted by Dean Keddy. But the fact that it was a competitive match will obviously do Gala the world of good going into their match against Stirling. Yeah,
definitely. I watched the footage back as well, and it looked like a nice open game of rugby, great weather. Dean Keddy certainly had his kicking boots on as well, as did Donald and Greg actually. Donald Anderson and Greg Rayburn, they slotted their conversion that they got. It's just good to see some open rugby. Peebles picked up a couple of injuries as well, so they're going to be a little bit depleted going into their game against Kirkcaldy, but Gala are starting to build again. I think especially when we were down at Netherdale, speaking to them, they've got this idea of where they want to be. And they're certainly starting to put the building blocks in place with putting a lot of young players into the squad and building them round about the older heads, likes of Ewan Dodds, Craig Dodds, those sort of players, Stevie Cairns as well. These players are the ones that have got the experience, and a 28-14 win against Peebles in the Border League, it's a good win for them to get started, and they'll be hoping to push on from there.
A few injuries for Peebles, huh?
Yeah, Greg Rayburn, I was speaking to him last night actually, and he's strained ankle ligaments, so he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, he says. So he's really disappointed because he's missed his rugby over the lockdown period, and he's a really, really important player. I can't go into as much, like, I've probably not got enough time to say how skillful a player Greg Rayburn is. I think he's one of the best 10s in the Borders, certainly. But he's a very, very important player for Peebles, and he's going to be a big loss for them. But they've got a lot of local players now that they can rely on to fill the voids, maybe reshuffle the pack a bit. Donald Anderson's a really good 10, so they'll be able to kind of rejig and hopefully get off to a win against Kirkcaldy.
And a mention of Gala, of course, we have to say congratulations to Ewan Dodds, 200 appearances on Saturday.
I know, I'm ages with Ewan Dodds, and I think I maybe got about 20 for people, so I'm kind of in awe of him. He's been able to stave off a lot of serious injuries and things as well. He's been a really important player, played big games for Gala as well through the time that they were, towards the top of the Premiership, winning the BT Cup. So it's not like he's been a bit part player for Gala. He's always been a very, very integral part of that squad. So to get 200 games for your local town is a great achievement for somebody. I could, think of all the JED players that are, going to be out, and Selkirk players on Saturday. To get that sort of accolade for your local team when you're a young guy running about playing for the Minis and the Rhinos and whatnot, to get 200 games for your local team's a huge achievement.
Now, the semi-juniors had their day in the sun on Saturday as well, starting their league campaign a week before the big boys, if you like, and we had big wins for Hoyk Youth and Peebles Colts, a draw between Duns Colts and Melrose Wasps, and Kelso Harlequins edging out Gala Wanderers at Netherdale. That was a good result for them.
Yeah, it usually takes a few weeks for the semi-junior to see what teams are going to be the strong ones. Hoyk have historically got a really talented pool of players to pick from, so it's no surprise they got off to a win. Peebles, again, sometimes they blow hot and cold, but obviously they've got the under-16s and the under-18s have been reasonably successful over the last few Sevens tournaments, so now they go into 15s and hopefully push on from there. But you've got the other teams, Gala, Melrose, they're always historically in the semi-juniors quite strong, and I know my friend Mark Eason who I work with at the Borders College, he'll be really impressed with the way that Selkirk have been through the Sevens and hoping that they can have a good semi-junior campaign as well.
Well, we'll have more about the club rugby scene later on in the programme when we do a little preview, which will be very difficult to do with no form, but we will do our best and tell you what's actually happening so you can go out and enjoy live rugby at your local club. But it's here at Jedforest where we are today at Riverside Park, an iconic place, iconic ground. And Bill, what about your own early memories, your earliest memories of Jedforest as a club?
I suppose really it is when I started teaching back here in 1964, and I became obviously teaching rugby at the grammar school, but I became involved with the club as a player, not for many years because I really wanted to spend my time teaching and coaching. And I got to know the people around about the rugby club then, and it's just been part of my life all that time since 1964. It's a hugely important part of the town and the fabric of the town. I think all the border clubs are, not just highlighting JED, but they are in the life of the town because they become social hubs and they become places where good values are transmitted to young people. And it gives some of the retired folk a job to do as well. Not that Paul's retired, but lots of committee men are. And it gives them just another little thing to keep them occupied. Many ways that rugby clubs affect the population. JED does it down here, and for me it's been a big part of my life. Dale touched on numbers of first 15 players and the dearth of them. Once you get past the sort of top 15 or 16, clubs struggle to get players after that. I can remember coming down here to watch Jedforest play, and I would sit and say 1, 2, 3, and I would get up to about 13 or 14 players who had come through my time at the grammar school and at the Thistle. And at that time, it always seemed to me that there were certainly enough numbers playing the game, even if the quality wasn't always there. But then as I went through my teaching career, and I got to 2003 when I finished, I was telling Richie Gray, who was Rugby Development Officer at the time, I says, Richie, the Borders has got a problem with pupil numbers playing rugby, and so it has proved. And it's very difficult now, even for clubs, to get a 15 from their own hometown. They have to import players. I suppose that's the reality of the situation. I'm not sure it's something I like, but that's the reality. And the numbers of kids playing the game have dropped a bit. Jedforest, I dare say, is affected by that, although you've got an excellent mini section. I mean, really, that is a tremendous accolade there, that you have this and people come from all over and bring their wee boys and girls to play Sunday rugby at the mini rugby. But there's a fall-off, and it's not just here in Jed, it's not just in the borders, it's right throughout the country. And you speak to people in other areas, they have problems unless they're putting out the pennies to get their first 15 together. And I don't know how you solve that problem, unless you have to make rugby a very attractive game to play. And I think at the moment, maybe go on to laws and all the rest of it later on, at the moment, I think rugby can be boring at professional level. So few errors. The coaches might not say that, but I think there are so few errors, it becomes routine. Out here at Riverside, watching Jed, I mean, you really need your pacemaker charged up because you get lots of error. And club rugby excites, and it's spontaneous. It's not as choreographed as the professional game. And I think that's what I like about it as much as anything. There you are, I've rambled on for a wee while about Jed and the world. Give somebody else a chance to speak now, I think.
Well, let's turn to Paul then. And Paul, of course, you are a former player yourself. You played in the past. And it's interesting, you look at the old photographs here and the teams, and there's many relatives of the folk who are actually going to be turning out on the pitch this coming Saturday.
It's a fact. Excuse me. You know, everybody knows everybody in a local town like Jed, and it wasn't until I married my wife I realised that she's related to everybody in Jed. And we had a family reunion down here a few years ago, and I had to really watch what I was saying. But no, it's. You know, I come from a strong rugby family, although it's not in Jed, it's Hawick, and as soon as you mention your name sometimes, oh, who's your father, sort of thing. And it's always good to think back and see what family members have played and look at the club boards and see who've been captain or president or such like.
Well, your dad, of course, played famously fullback for Hawick.
He did, and that was another wee story when I came to Jed Grammar School, and Mr. Johnstone, I have to call him that, was my PE teacher. My dad actually made me go up and play rugby at Hawick for the PSA, and thankfully I was able to go on and play for the famous Greens. Not in the woolly jerseys, I must add. They'd moved on from then, although I still have my father's at home.
Llanelli, Cardiff, always renowned as the outside half factory, famously dubbed that by the legendary Max Boyce, of course. And you could say at Jedforest, it's the scrum half factory.
You could, and I would defy anybody to explain why. Because I think it's just an act of God, to be perfectly honest. I think it's coincidence that you've had Roy Laidlaw first, then Gary Armstrong second, and Greg Laidlaw most recently, all three capped for Scotland, played for the Lions, and captained Scotland. Great players, totally different. How do they come from this wee club? I don't know. I think if you can play behind a Jed Park, going in reverse at times quite a lot, you can probably play behind a better park going forward, even more skillfully. I think they're a huge contrast in style, though, when you think of the three of them. Roy was so quick over the ground. You see some of these old clips of him sidestepping through the England back row. I mean, he's like greased lightning. I remember him playing for Jed at Melrose Sevens in 1974. They played standoff. And he was a revolution. It was pace, Derek Hill at centre, George Turnbull on the wing, and Perry Mason, Robert Mason at scrum half. And what pace Roy Laidlaw could inject, and he brought that to his international game. Gary was like a prize boxer. He was just had this raw strength. But I always felt with Gary Armstrong, this guy doesn't make mistakes. He is so safe, so secure. He knows instinctively which way to turn to get away from the opposition. And of course, he tackled like the clap of doom. And then you had Greg, smaller. He looked smaller anyway. He was about 12 and a half stones, which was heavier than Roy was when he played, but about 12 and a half stones, and a goal-kicking machine. And just a wonderfully heady, I used to say he's like a supercomputer. He had always felt he had so many options that he could take. He maybe lacked that yard of pace, which he himself would have liked. Gary Armstrong wasn't the fastest either. Roy was the one who was blessed with pace. But Greg had goal kicking and tremendous rugby savvy and rugby nous. And I used to love watching him play. Oh, when you think of him, and he stood and he kicked the goal against Ireland just a few seasons ago that sealed the game. And he turned to the East Stand crowd and he beat his jersey with his fist with a thistle on it. I thought, that's my boy. Go on, son.
Fantastic.
3 fabulous players.
Paul, of course, you had the 3 Nines dinner down here with Roy and Greg and Gary. There was also rugby royalty present as well. We had the Johnny Wilkinson, Stuart Hogg, Doddy Weir, Finn Russell, Gregor Townsend. A lot of people turned out to support them, as you would expect. And the great thing about it was, I think, all the profits from that evening was to go back to the youth of the club. They were giving back in spades that night.
Well, that's it, and they all wanted to do it for the club and, you know, youth rugby in the town, because they all came up through the youth system. Obviously, there wasn't any mini rugby when Roy played, but both Gary and Greg came up through the mini rugby and then on to play here at Riverside. And they're very passionate about it, Jed. You know, they're not always able to be here, but this is where it started for them, and they wanted to put something back to the club, and it was a huge night, really successful, and one I'll certainly not forget for a long time. And
they always turn up when they can, don't they, to support the club?
Yeah, but believe us, it takes a few phone calls. It's not always as easy as it looks.
Well, he is in Japan, to be fair.
That's true.
Now, Dale, let's come to you for the interesting question here, because you've got no JED connections, as far as we know anyway. I'm going to ask you a very, very unfair question. If you were selecting a JED Greats team and you were asked to name the number 9 jersey, who would be filling it from your point of view?
Gary Armstrong. It doesn't take me long to think about that, because I remember when I first got interested in rugby when I was playing at school. It was around about the time he was playing. It was the first sporting autobiography I ever read. I thought he was just a great player. He reminded me of a guy in Peebles called Rab Olsen, and I never got to ever watch him play, but they were just the same in stature. They were the same position and everything like that. He's a really dogged individual, and I just always thought that about Gary. He was so skillful. He just liked to muck in. He punched above his weight, and he you know, Bill's mentioned it as well. He doesn't know how they've ended up with 3 nines. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a role model in a club. We talk about values, and clubs give you this, and they give they help grow people. But also, if you've got role models, I'm sure Gary Armstrong was watching Roy Laidlaw thinking, I want to be like him. And Greg Laidlaw would be exactly the same watching Gary Armstrong. But yeah, Gary for me I thought he was a terrific player. So
that was quite easy for you, that question. But for Bill Johnstone and for Paul Cranston, I would imagine that's a toughie.
I'm going to hedge my bets. I'm going to say I would play Gary at scrum half, I'd play Greg at standoff, and I'd play Roy at inside centre. And they could change over whenever they blooming well like, because they can play all 3 positions.
Well, that's a good answer. That's an excellent answer. And of course, recently, we'll say recent, probably about 10 years ago now, Hoyk decided that they were going to try and do the impossible and come up with the greatest team ever that ever wore the green jersey. It was a fantastic night, you know, obviously open to debate, but you had the late great Hugh MacLeod was there, and Whitaker and Stuart Hogg present, of course, and it was Hoyt royalty. It really was a fantastic night, and it would be interesting, wouldn't it, to go round the clubs and have their own kind of night, because I mean, obviously open to debate, but what a great evening that would be.
I was at the SRU Hall of Fame dinner in Murrayfield the night that Hugh MacLeod was given his membership of the Hall of Fame, and I had a long chat with Hugh, whom I've known for years, and the place just rose to him when he got his presentation. He's just used the word iconic earlier on, but MacLeod really was iconic. He was something else. Scotland, South, Barbarians, Lions, you name it, he did it. He even took the conversions when Hoyt played 7s.
Wow.
He did. He was one of these amazing all-round players, and he sprinted and ran, and nothing was more important to Hugh than winning the game. He was a winner. He was only about, maybe 14 stones and a bit when he played international rugby, which is, you know, the weight of an inside centre now in a professional team. Very light man, but he was technically so sound and hard as nails. He used to go down as a schoolboy to Mansfield to watch Hoyk on the Saturday afternoons, and they were always hoping and praying that George Stevenson and Robin Charters and Hugh MacLeod and Hegarty and these boys would all be playing. They were our heroes, our role models at the time. And when MacLeod came out, immaculate, bristling, he was desperate for the fray. And we used to just love watching this man, and Adam Robson and his like as well.
And what a record he had as well, 40-odd caps, wasn't it? And it was consecutive.
It was a long, long stretch without being dropped, which at that time, knowing the fickle nature of Scottish selection, was a pretty remarkable achievement. MacLeod spoke his mind. They roomed him once. This has just come to me. He was roomed with Frans ten Bos, the big South African lock, who I think Hugh thought Frans needs a wee bit boot up his bottom just to get him going, So the SRU in their wisdom roomed him with Hugh MacLeod the night before the international. And Frans ten Bos was scared out his wits. He didn't know what MacLeod was saying, of course. Very broad Hawick accent. And it was just one of these things. And evidently he had a very good game the day after, because he knew he would have to face his prop forward mentor if he didn't.
Fantastic memories there about the great Hugh MacLeod, of course. We've got the big match on Saturday starting. I mean, what a great way to start a Premiership season. Jedforest versus Selkirk at Riverside Park. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And of course, in your commentary days, that's one that you would have liked to have taken the mic for.
Indeed, it would. And I just say, thank goodness we're back to club rugby again, because it's been a long layoff. And Jed Selkirk down here this weekend, God willing, the weather will be half decent and we'll get a dryish ball. And then let these 30 players plus their replacements get out and enjoy themselves. At the end of the day, the game is all about the players, whether they go pro or whether they stay amateur or whether they want to progress to higher levels in the game. It's about them. But out here, I like the honest endeavour. And you get wee flashes now and then of something quite exceptional. One of the young boys playing the other week, a couple of weeks ago against Morpeth on the far side, I think it was Gregor, half out the tackle, the back, the offload out the back of the hand to the winger, and the winger screaming away up the touchline. It's wee things like that you look for. Lots of new faces in the Jed side, goodness me. As I was saying before, there were about 13 out of 15 I used to know. Not now. Not now. I have a lot of homework to do before I get to know them again.
And a great opportunity for the youngsters to come up and show what they can do.
Absolutely. There's, I believe, young lads who have come through from the Thistle and had missed a season because of the COVID pandemic. And some of them were playing in that game against Morpeth about 10 days ago. And I thought that some of the pace of the game, I thought was very good considering it was pre-season. The thing that struck me, and I said it to my pal with whom I was sitting in the stand, I says, my God, I says, they're young, but they've got tons of, there's no inhibition. They want to get in and exchange the physicality of the match. That's what struck me. Bill McLaren always used to speak about the Jeddart Pygmies when he spoke about the grammar school kids playing Hawick High School kids, because there was a difference in size. But I thought the Jed players were just a wee bit on the wee side, some of the young lads. So they'll fill out in time, but they'll rely on the young brothers and Big Skeldon, Clark Skeldon and Gregor Law if he's fit, and Bladroff and that sort of thing. These guys who have been there before and know how to get themselves through a game.
Well, it's certainly a mouth-watering match, and we certainly look forward to that. Of course, we'll be bringing commentary on that game and highlights on Sunday, our first Sunday commentary, something to look forward to there. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was down here covering Chris Laidlaw's magnificent effort in running 12 marathons in 12 months. He completed his 7th one here at Jed, and I think the last one's going to be back here at Jed again, possibly as well. And he was helped in the closing stages by a certain Robert Hogg, who's of course giving it yet another season at Jedforest, and we're delighted about that. And I had a quick chat with him. Every year I think the subject comes up. Robert Hogg, is he going to be playing for Jedforest for another season? And we've had 2 years out, obviously, as we know, and that's probably freshened you up and made you nice and keen and ready, and you're going to do another season.
Yeah, it probably has to be the last season.
You've said that before.
Yeah,
though.
I know. But there's different. We're expecting our second child in 4 weeks' time, so it's now or never basically. And obviously during lockdown with the corona, I've put in a bit extra training now with rugby and got myself fitted up. Feel a lot better, as you say, a lot more refreshed. I've got more ideas in regards to the game, and I like to think myself as a sort of a senior figure with a lot of the younger boys that have came up for the Thistle. So I like to give back to the club, and I feel like I can come down and give some of the younger guys some ideas, and certainly try and still obviously compete to try and play, whether it be firsts or seconds. But yeah, we'll give it one last year and see how we get on, Stuart.
Of course, Callum Young is away to Headaches now, playing Super 6, so again another product of Jed who's moving up the scale. You've still got Lewis and Gregor Young as well, and Rory Marshall, who always seems to be under the radar, but what a player he is.
He's a serious grafter when it comes to rugby. He puts his body on the line a lot in the training. A lot of respect for Rory. He's not the biggest guy in the pitch, but he's always got one of the biggest hearts, and he'll be a key player certainly this season for Jed and in many years to come. In regards to the young twins, you know, they're getting in their 30s, same age as me, but they've obviously had the experience. They've got a great rugby CV, and they always bring a bit extra motivation to the training. And it's guys like this, especially for Jed, that we're going to need this season. We've not always got the biggest forward pack, but we've always got good workers and guys that are always willing to put their body on the line every Saturday for the jersey. You can ask a lot more of that. We're getting 30-40 boys at training, and it shows great future for certainly for Jedforest, and the club's in a good way right now. So
and a new coaching setup with Gav Kerr's obviously still with you, but Scott Tomlinson coming in now.
Yeah, Scott brings a lot of fresh ideas too, being an ex-player for Selkirk, ex-referee, which really helps us. Scott, he's brought a lot of new ideas. You've got Conor Hogg helping too. Mike Howe, I believe's helped the last few weeks in defence. He'll be a great asset. And the guys are really buying into it. Now and again, you need fresh faces down here, some new ideas, try things that you're not used to doing. And I think Scott will be a great asset for us certainly. And certainly against first game against Selkirk, I think he'll get us more than up for it, certainly. Yeah.
I mean, if you can't get up for Jedforest against Selkirk on the opening day of the Premiership, then something's definitely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great first game to start with, certainly a border derby. Will there be much rugby getting played? Hard to say, but it's a great first game, certainly for both sides. And after that, you take as it comes. You know, you've got to go still up to places like Mar and Aberdeen, hard, stuffy teams. So I think the boys are a lot happier to play national rather than border. To be honest, it's a very competitive league, and we just have to see how we go on. I think our main concern is we need to keep guys from injury for us to compete. But I mean, I've been down about a month or so, and the guys are certainly looking fit and sharp and ready to go. And guys are buying into the new structure that we've got down here. So ready for certainly for hopefully the last season. Anyways, and we'll take it for there.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. Have an injury-free season and have a good season.
Thanks, Stuart. I appreciate it every time. Cheers. Cheers, pal.
Robert Hogg, and today's programme has been slanted so far towards Jed, understandably, as we're here at the club, but earlier in the week I caught up with Scott White, Selkirk's head coach, to get his thoughts ahead of the big match on Saturday from a Selkirk perspective.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't get any bigger really in terms of 3 border teams in the league, and to get one of the border teams week 1, it's huge for everybody. It gives everybody an incentive, to start the season well, to get some local bragging rights hopefully.
What about the build-up? Because it's been very difficult.
It's been a bit of a disaster, to be honest. I mean, we went to Peebles. We obviously we spoke about it as players, so we put a huge amount of effort into Peebles and Hoyk sevens to try and get as many Kings of Sevens points as possible. And I'll wear that as a coach, and that was a decision that we made as a club. And then the whole COVID struck, so then we had to pull out of Hoyk sevens, which was far from ideal because 4 teams then jump you in the space of a week. And then we played Kelso a week ago, and then just a week past there we had to cancel our friendly against Musselburgh due to COVID, front row crisis, and a few injuries. Just we couldn't afford really any more injuries before this week, to be honest.
I was going to say, because people like Aaron McComb out.
No, I know, so I mean, bit of a shocker as well to lose Aaron, but obviously we've got young Callum there, Anderson, who'll probably come in at 10 this week. We'll look at things tonight at training and see where we are, but there could be a bit of juggling act going on this week just to make
make sure we've got our strongest 15 on the pitch.
And of course, you're not alone, because Hoyk were out as well, and they get 2 days preparation for their match against Curry. So, it's not just a Borders thing. Obviously, this is happening all over Scotland.
No, and I mean, I think it's something we're going to have to deal with throughout the season. And I mean, I'm sure there'll be late call-offs, i.e. a Thursday night or a Friday, there might be, but clubs probably haven't really got a huge amount of direction behind that. Is it a case that you stretch the squad and you're having to call the seconds guys up, and then that affects the seconds, and how does it all work? I'm sure it'll come out in the wash over the next couple of weeks, but look, everybody's in the same boat. It's the world we kind of live in at the moment until it obviously gets a bit better. We're obviously encouraging everybody at Selkirk to get the double vaccine, just so obviously they get the PCR and they're negative, they can come straight back to training. But there's still young guys in the squad and they've not been double vaccinated, so we'll deal with it, and I'm sure the team will change weekly, as will everyone.
Yeah, so it's a big step into the unknown, isn't it?
Oh no, it is, and I mean, it just adds to the dilemma of injuries. Usually you've got to deal with injuries, but this year you've got the whole COVID kind of bubble going about at the moment. But I mean, I think over the last few weeks, it's just great to see rugby back. And I think, the smiley faces down at Peebles, at the Guides, and then we played Kelso a week past Saturday. And, it's just great that rugby's back up and running, and we've got it in some capacity. And then that's up to, coaches, squads to make the most of it in the kind of circumstances we're dealing with.
And people are coming out. I was down at the People's match against Gala in the Border League, and Netherdale was pretty well supported.
I think maybe any excuse for a wee bit of socialising. I mean, people have been cooped up in their houses for the last kind of 16 months. So it's great to get events on your doorstep and out. And look, I'm hopeful that there'll be a huge following from Selkirk down at Riverside on Saturday, and we start the season with a bang.
Now, of course, a border derby is slightly different to playing a team outside of the area. When you go into this match as a head coach, what do you actually tell them? Is it throw the ball about, or is it keep it tight, or what do you do?
I mean, look, it's one of those. I mean, you've got to, ideally you like to do your wee bit homework before it, but I mean,
there's no homework.
No, exactly. No one really knows who's signed who. No one really knows what. So, I mean, it'll be interesting when you see the kind of team selections coming out in the end of the week. But I think you've still got to box clever. I mean, they've obviously got Lewis and Gregor Young and Rory Marshall in the back three. So, I mean, you've got to be clever. You can't play too loose and too, and our kicking game's got to be in the money. We can't give them too many easy counter-attack opportunities, whereas, you look at someone like Hoyk, where probably they're stronger up front with like your Sean Muir, Matty Carriers and stuff like that. So I think you've got to change your game plan to the opponents you play on a weekly basis. So, we'll look at that, we'll mention it through the week, but I think most importantly, we've got to look inside the camp and, where are our strengths, and we've got to play our strengths, and we've got to back what the players at Selkirk want to do. They want to play rugby, so, you don't want to take that away from them either. So, I mean, there's a bit of, mix and match, but I think, first and foremost, we look what we've got inside the camp. We've got, we'll have a very competitive squad on Saturday in terms of the 22, 23 that are named. So, we've got to play our own strengths and back ourselves, and obviously play with confidence and enjoy it.
Both teams full of local talent. I know a lot of the Selkirk guys quite well. I think they've obviously tried to shape up for a real crack at it this year. And the games I've covered in the past for Radio Borders that we've covered, they're always very, very competitive. There's not much between the two teams either. Jed are a big open flowing. They love that open brand of rugby. Let's get it wide. Let's test the other teams. The small stature for Jed, which Bill touched on, sometimes is to their benefit that they can keep going and keep going. And Selkirk, they've got a lot of talented players. They tend to have maybe a couple of bigger players in the pack as well, but they're muchness nowadays, and I think it's going to be a really, really competitive game for an opening game of the season.
And Paul, we haven't had crowds down here for a long, long time. They're going to come back this Saturday, aren't they? Well,
if they don't come back for a Jed Selkirk game, we'll never have them, I don't think. It's always a great occasion. It's probably the sort of Jed Kelso fixture of late, because unfortunately Kelso aren't in the same league as us, so Selkirk's probably the next best thing, and both towns are pretty similar as well in population and just nature.
And I mean, another thing obviously is looking at the teams. You've lost Callum Young, for instance, to Heriots. He's moved up to Super 6. Monty Mitchell has gone back down under. But again, as we were saying to Bill, it's opportunities for youngsters to come up. And already we've seen a few shining through on the Sevens circuit at Peebles and also at Gala and at Hawick.
Yeah, there's some youngsters there that I had to look twice when it came down to pre-season, because I can remember coaching them at the mini rugby and thinking, God, they're not here already, and you think, oh, I'm old. But no, there's some young lads, young Aidan Barnbrick and Ross Nichol. These are young lads who have come up from the Thistle, who I think will get a fair shout at a game, and I don't think they'll let the side down. I think they'll learn pretty quick and they'll get stuck in.
And another couple of names I could throw in there, Mason Cullen and Kieran Hayes.
Yeah, both exciting runners. Mason's obviously a good heritage there through his brother, but no, he's a really exciting player. They both are. They're really good to have down here.
And one of the great days at Murrayfield was when Jed Thistle took part in the final of the under-18 competition, the youth competition against Highland. We saw a few of the team go on to bigger things. People like Robbie Eurston, Gary Munro, Rory Marshall, Finlay Scott were all playing that day. And just to put a smile on your face, we're going to rerun some of those great moments from that particular match. Certainly that will bring back a lot of memories for the players, certainly, and their families, and all fans of Jed Thistle going back and lifting that trophy at the National Stadium. Well, Dale, to end with, we're going to take a look at the fixture card for the weekend, starting with a very tasty under-16s clash tomorrow night between Hawick Youth and Gala Red Triangle under the lights at Volunteer Park. And of course, it doesn't matter what level you're playing at, a Gala and Hawick match is always worth watching.
Yeah, definitely, especially when it's under the lights night game. Hopefully get quite a big crowd down. It's just good that we've got that back up and running again, and certainly a Hawick Gala battle is always a very, very good one. So yeah, hopefully get quite a lot of folk down to watch that game, and they've both had good starts to the season as well in their sevens. Unlucky against what's been a very, very impressive Peebles team. But it just shows that they've got a lot of young, good players coming throughout the borders, not just in little pockets. It's filtered across. So yeah, it's going to be a good game between Hawick and Gala.
Obviously, we've discussed Jedforest against Selkirk, but Hawick have a home match against Curry. A lot of people are looking at Curry and saying, this could be the team to watch. We know there's no form, but they did actually have a bounce game against Heriots and put over 40 points past them, and that's not an easy thing to do. And of course, Hawick literally will have 2 days to prepare because they've all been out with COVID.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really difficult thing this season. I think not even just the first couple of weeks. I think as the year progresses, it's going to be a real big talking point throughout. But that's just the kind of current climate that we're in. Hopefully, everybody's going out getting double vaccinated. We can kind of cut it down as much as possible. But Hawick are going to have quite a difficult year, I think. They've obviously they've lost a couple of players to the Southern Knights, a couple of their bigger players over the last few years, and they've really had to try and harness the youth that they've had coming through their kind of youth system over the last few years. So it's going to be maybe a big ask if Curry are getting that sort of result against Heriot. So it's going to be one of those games that Hawick might come up unstuck, but they want to get off the season to a big win. Matty Carrier was saying when they went down to, I think it was Doncaster they went down to, he said that it was a really, really good test for them. He said the young guys showed up really, really well. He's obviously captain this year, but he was saying that the young guys really, really stuck in. And he says, out with the result, that's what you were wanting. You were wanting the young guys to get immersed in this competitive, physical rugby, because for a lot of them it'll be their first time. So with COVID or without COVID, it's something that we're going to have to talk about for a long time, but a very difficult game for Hawick to start.
National 1 is a couple of home matches in the area. Gala against Stirling, of course, coming off the back of the People's victory in the Border League, and Melrose against Heriots.
Again, two difficult games to talk about. Good that they're at home. Again, there's no form for all of these teams, but Gala, if they've got a win in a competitive game, a Border League game, it builds confidence. These wins, the young players that are coming through to senior rugby for the first time, when they realise they've got a win under their belt, they think, this is... It brings confidence in younger players a lot quicker than perhaps the older ones who have been there and done it. They're a little bit more impressionable, so certainly that first win's going to be really good for them. And Melrose welcome back quite a few players from their, I think last week they were missing out with a few for Bruce Colvin's wedding. So they should be at full strength now. I'm sure the hangovers will be a little bit better now, but they'll be back to full tilt and they'll be wanting to give it a good crack. I think they've got a really good depth of squad. Certainly started to flourish towards the end of the sevens, but I know 15s is completely different, but good experience in there. So
Gala and Melrose get a couple of home matches. Now Kelso couldn't have picked a worse start, I think. They're going to Cartha Queen's Park. Now people following Kelso will know that the last time they went to Dumbreck, it was 98 points to 3 to Cartha Queen's Park. Admittedly, they did come back on the second leg at Poynter Park and got to within 1 point. But Kelso, I've been at Edinburgh Accies when they lost 85-0. They're not great travellers.
No, I think they'll get more than 3 points up for this weekend. But Paul's already stuck the knife in by saying that they're not in the same league as Jed earlier on, saying unfortunately Selkirk are the next best thing. But Kelso, again, a very difficult team. They've got a lot of good players. Frankie Robson's been a terrific player, not just for Kelso but for Gala as well. Murray Hastie's in there as well. They've got Andy Tate. They've got a lot of experience and a lot of players that have they've managed to retain. I think Bruce McNeil's there as well now.
Yeah,
so they've got a lot of experience and a lot of Bruce McNeil's been there and done it. So he'll be a good figurehead for the younger players coming through, who, as I say, are impressionable and they can go in all guns blazing, gloves off, and they can go out and try and get a win and get their season off to a start.
In National 2 and 3 we have Peebles and Berwick, of course, representing the Borders. Peebles away at Kirkcaldy and Berwick away at Strathmore, which I had to look up on the map, and I thought it was Dumfries. There is a Strathmore, but not the Strathmore Rugby Club. It's actually north of Dundee.
Well, I'm glad you weren't covering that game. I watched the Peebles Berwick game a couple of weeks ago down at the Guides, and it was a quite an open affair. I think very, very scrappy, but I think the weather conditions didn't help that. Peebles have got a good group of local guys. I think they will be reeling from the loss of Greg Rayburn, because I think they were really looking forward to really starting with a big strong cohort of local talent. And I think the first games are Kirkcaldy and then Stumel, and I think they looked at them as their two biggest ones. So they're going to have to reshuffle and go in, because Kirkcaldy will be strong. They're always historically strong, especially their pack has always been a really, really difficult, stubborn pack to play against. So a difficult one for Peebles, and a bit of an unknown probably for Berwick in terms of Strathmore. So it's they'll be hoping to try and get off to a good start. They've always been a team that have kind of floated up and down, but again, it's player retention. They've had a lot of good players leave their club. Ali Greaves now back, if not playing, he's in a supporting role. So they've got a lot of good players there and a good kind of cohort of guys. Berwick's always been a difficult team. They've always fluctuated, but they've had recent success at Murrayfield. So, hopefully the younger guys will be wanting to try and lead on there as well. Now,
in the news since our last programme, the sad news that Hawick Harlequins have pulled out of East League 1, which leaves Duns as the only representative from the Borders, and ironically they don't have a match this weekend. But just a word on Quins, because obviously it's not the demise of the club. They want to come back. It's just that this season they're just so short of players.
I think that's I think we've all spoken about it in terms of player numbers. We don't live in a period of time now that's like years gone by when rugby pretty much was the first and foremost of all men. They loved playing rugby. Their work was almost based around it. Things are a little bit different in our culture now, and I think, for my opinion, and I can't talk for Hawick. Hawick have got a rich history of rugby, but it's almost an opportunity to try and even informally readdress how they can help best support their community with rugby. All the clubs that they've got, it's got really rich heritage, but this does highlight an issue that we've got a serious lack of players to fulfil all these games throughout Scotland. That's even without COVID. So it's maybe an opportunity for Hawick to even have some discussions about how they can try and best serve their community, because it's disappointing to lose a team. And although, Hawick, being Hawick, they're very resilient. They'll want to come back, Hawick Harlequins, and come back next year, hopefully with bigger numbers. But it's difficult. We can never predict the future, but we can try and safeguard what we've got just now, and that might be a way forward for Hawick.
Well, just briefly, in East League 2, Inverleith against Langham. Langham playing their first match in their 150th year. We wish them all the best with that. Hawick Lindeen have a home match against Leith, and their little match against Selkirk last week will certainly stand them in good stead for that. In the semi-juniors, it's Jed Thistle against Gala Wanderers, Kelso Quins v Duns Colts, Melrose Wasps against Carlisle, Peebles Colts against Morpeth, Selkirk Youth Club against Alnwick, and Tynedale against Hawick Youth. And of course, Dale, it's good to see these cross-border, Scotland playing England teams, and the different culture that brings. Yeah,
it's especially, not to be disrespectful to the teams as you go further down, but it is more of a social atmosphere. Clubs provide you a lot more than just out and out fitness and testing yourself. It's creating memories and friendships and relationships within the community. So certainly down that area, we used to always love when we were a younger age, but going down to Tynedale, because you were a bit younger, bus trip, it was like you were like a senior player, and it was great because you'd go down there and get a really competitive fixture as well. You felt like it was us against the world, and that comes with their own little rivalries as well. So yeah, it's great to see, but obviously there's a place for that level of rugby in all of Scotland anyway.
And of course, we mustn't forget, on Sunday, Kelso Ladies, their very first match in National 1 at West of Scotland, a big long trip from them to, I think, Burnbrae, isn't it, the West of Scotland venue. We certainly wish them luck in that, and that's going to be a tough league for them, but one that they fully deserve to be in. Yeah, definitely, but you've got to start somewhere. You've got to, if you want to play competitively and that's your aspirations for your club, you've got to try your hardest to fight at the top of the most competitive areas of the league, and that's what Kelso Ladies are going to have to do. And it's, they're one of our only representatives in this region, and hopefully it's something that can grow in the future. But to do that, you need to have role models, you need to have pathways for players to progress in international rugby or even the top level of amateur rugby. So hopefully Kelso Ladies can help provide that platform. Well, we've just about run out of time, but I'd like to thank our special guest today, Bill Johnstone. Of course, always a pleasure to see you. Paul Cranston as well, of course, President for the 7th year here at Jedforest, and of course Dale Clancy as well. We'll be, no doubt, seeing you very, very soon indeed. Next week, we come to Earlston, and we're looking certainly forward to going down to the Hawk and catching up with our friends down there. But for now, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.